So tonight we are having this forum, and as far as I know, it is the only forum in the riding. Is there another forum going on? Anyone heard of? Happening? So this is really exciting. So we have the opportunity to have this here. We're asking everyone during the forum tonight to be able to show respect. All of us want to have a voice. All of us want to be able to hear what the candidates have to say. So let's please be respectful. And that includes being respectful of time. I'm just going to go through some of the rules for tonight. And as I go through that, I want to first introduce some amazing young students who are going to be part of the evening tonight. These are 4 students from Tom Baines Junior High School, and they're going to be in charge of keeping the time tonight and keeping us on time. Right, candidates? Yeah. All right, so I'd like to introduce them, and ladies, can you please stand up, because I think this is pretty incredible that we have young people involved in this process. Alexis, So we're going to be asking every candidate to give us 3 minutes for an introduction. We'll have a timer and we'll signal a 30-second caution and a stop when your time is done. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to questions. And they'll get 30 seconds to respond to candidates' challenges after everyone's had an opportunity to answer the questions. Again, please be respectful of the time. You'll be cut off promptly when your allotted time is up. Audience, if you'd like to ask questions from the floor, we have index cards. Many of you might have picked them up. Please ask your question on those cards. We have volunteers walking around with yellow tags.
Hi, I'm Polly Knowlton-Cockett, and I am a resident of Brentwood. I've lived there for 23 years. And anyone who lives in Edgemont knows that Brentwood's just over there. And we have a lot in common, including the schools that our children go to. A lot of the students from Calgary Foothills end up at Sir Winston Churchill High School, which is also where all 3 of my children went. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am currently an instructor in the Faculty of Education at the University of Calgary in teacher preparation. I'm teaching a really great course right now on STEM education. And for those that don't know, that stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And we like to also add the A so that the arts are in there and call it STEAM. And I like to call it eco-STEAM because we want everything that we do to be in an ecological context, a responsible way of thinking about how one thing affects another. And in the schools, our teachers will be taking that. I've also participated with the Alberta Council for Environmental Education recently, giving input to the government on the curriculum redesign, and to get that environmental thinking in there in every subject, in every discipline, at every level, not as something extra to do, but part and parcel about the way we think about all issues that we encounter, whether it's to do with the oil sands, whether it's to do with our healthcare system or education. The Green Party itself is connected in with the Greens worldwide, which can continue to make fantastic progress in setting policies and giving direction and representing the people. They stand for ecological wisdom, which is part of what I've just been talking about. They stand for social justice, for sustainability, and whatever that might mean. And there's a lot of dialogue around, well, what does that mean? And that is all also inclusive of participatory democracy. If a certain percentage of Albertans are voting Green or for any particular party, well, then that percentage should be represented at the table making decisions for our society. So we need to switch that up a little bit and catch up with some of the other countries in the world which are doing that. We also, this respect for diversity. Now, last week, as an environmental educator, I was at the North American Association for Environmental Education held in Ottawa, and it was great, and it was a really interesting conversation around even the word diversity, and maybe that we should change it to the word inclusivity, because to be diverse is to divide and separate, and what we really want to do is bring people in and have that respect in all directions. So words do matter. I have no idea how much time I have left, but it looks like a red card there. So, so thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here and to be representing all of your voices in the legislature. So thank you.
I want to echo the thanks to Julie and to Stephanie and to volunteers, and thank you all for coming. So I'm going to start with telling you a bit about who I am. I'm going to talk a bit about why I'm running, and then I'm going to tell you why you should vote for me. So I'm a longtime Calgarian. I was raised nearby, just over the hill in Beddington, as we say, and my husband, who is over there, we both consider Calgary our home. I work as a communications consultant in an engineering firm, and so I tell people that means I'm a professional listener. I get to build narratives, and I get to build teams based on shared values and shared goals. I also volunteer with several organizations that do work about raising violence against women, raising awareness about violence against women, and also environmental sustainability. I'm running because as a longtime Calgary resident, a community organizer, and a voter, I'm proud of my city, and I believe we deserve better government. It upsets me when I hear about voter apathy when every day I'm working beside these incredible volunteers and these incredible activists. My experience has shown me that people are disengaged from politics because our government has failed them and they're boycotting a broken system, not because they're apathetic. So if you'd asked me a year ago if I would be standing here, I would have been pretty surprised, I think. But I had lots of conversations with my friends and my family and some really great mentors, and I realized this is the best way I can give back to my community, and I'm really honored to do so. Alberta is a modern and it's a growing province, and your riding deserves an engaged and it deserves a connected MLA. I've spent the last 2.5 weeks door knocking evenings and weekends after working my full-time job, and anyone who knows me can tell you that I am a fierce advocate. And I am an extremely hard worker. I had a master's degree by the time I was 22. A couple years ago, I became one of the youngest managers in my firm. So I know that successful leadership, it takes commitment, but it also means drawing from the resources of your team. As your MLA, I would continue building on the relationships I've started during this campaign, drawing on the knowledge of community leaders. And above all, I would continue to be a professional listener. I would make sure your interests are represented in the legislature. We need a fresh, collaborative approach to government in Calgary, and especially in Foothills, where the same party has represented you here for 43 years. The Alberta NDP is a growing party across the province, and it's gaining some incredible momentum and energy in Calgary right now. I believe that I have the experience and I have the passion to be your MLA and bring the change that your riding deserves. So this election, I'm asking you to vote for something different, but also vote for something better. Thank you.
I would like to thank the organizers, the other candidates, and each of you for the opportunity to participate in tonight's debate. I grew up on a farm outside of Cochrane, learned the value of hard work and the need to get a good education. I graduated from the University of Calgary with a BA in Law and Society, and as you have guessed, played center for the U of C Dinos. I've coached the 15A provincial champions in basketball, and now own a small business. Isn't it a privilege to live in the best province, in the best country in the world? There are good things happening in Alberta. A lot of things that need fixing. Things that can and should be better. Have you ever asked yourself why? When we have one of the world's best economies in the world, why are roads and hospitals and schools run down? Why do you have to wait so long in line for basic health care? Why are our children's classrooms so overcrowded? Why are seniors being nickeled and dimed? And to top this off, why are we going into debt again? It's because after 43 years The same old government with the same old ideas are not working for the Alberta of 2014. Mr. Prentice is a good man running to serve our province, but his team and his party have caused enough trouble for you. They've changed enough leaders for them in 3 years. It's time for you to send a message to Albertans to change our government. The Alberta Liberals offer a vision for a better economy, an Alberta that is strong, that has a strong society. What does that mean? A strong economy means doing the right thing on the environment with the world's best practices so we can get our pipelines through and our product to market. We need to diversify, develop, and innovate with technologies. That means investing in post-secondary education, reducing tuition, hiring enough teachers to teach our kids from K to 12, hiring enough nurses to care for our sick and elderly, building and maintaining our public infrastructure, schools, and hospitals. How are we going to pay for this? Firstly, we got to change our government. We got to open up the books and find out where all our money is being spent and wasted. I want to say it's time for change. I'm Robert Pristick, and I'm asking your support to represent you in the legislature. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Round of applause for all the candidates in this riding. So I'm going to start off with one question from the organizing committee, and this is to all the candidates. And Kathy will go first in response to it. It's been in the media a lot lately that we need more senior support, whether in home care, long-term care, or assisted living. How would your party go about doing this? And would your party partner with for-profit seniors care to address this issue?
Great. Well, thank you very much, Julie. I want to start off by saying that the Wild Rose Party supports universal health care and the Canada Health Act. I mean, I want to get that out first off. Universal public health care and the Canada Health Act. We need a strong healthcare system. I was just speaking to a doctor actually before I got here tonight, and his response was that our healthcare system is a disaster. It is in crisis, and so when we're hearing about this is absolutely the case, and this is coming straight from a doctor. Our seniors are the ones that are dealing with a lot of these issues because they do not have the mobility, and they're waiting in these long lineups. There's a shortage of beds, and there's a lack of doctors to go around. So our seniors definitely do need some special care in this case. We have seniors that are only having possibly 2 baths a week. So that's unbelievable to think about. Waiting 2 years to see a back specialist. We have patients waiting up to 24 hours in emergency. Meanwhile, what we're hearing about are these bonuses to executives, $3.2 million spent on bonuses to executives at Alberta Health Care Services. So this is not acceptable in a prosperous province like this. It's not easy to find beds. We have a problem. We need to free them up for our seniors. Home care does a great job. I want to mention that first off. And the Wild Rose Party has just announced that they're going to be putting an additional $50 million into home care to help with our seniors, to give them the dignity to stay at home and have their families care for them in the comfort of their own home. So that's really very important to the Wild Rose Party and to myself. And I would certainly like to advocate in this area and work in this area. I care very deeply for seniors, and I dealt with this firsthand with my mother, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, thanks again. The Green Party is very, of course, supports universal health care, in particular through this idea of social justice and inclusivity and respect. And how can you take that into our communities in a way that is holistic? Within the healthcare system, only some things are covered by the Health Act, and there are lots of other health practitioners that could serve seniors very well through exercise or other ways of working in an array of services, which would be wonderful to have. There are a lot of medical practices in Calgary now developing more holistically that picks up on this whole ecological thinking things. If we have that personal care, this individual care within our healthcare system, at home, as Kathy has mentioned, of course, so people can live in their homes for as long as possible. Even Mayor Nenchi's secondary suite things is related to keeping seniors in their homes longer. If we can find ways within our communities to collaboratively work together and support each other. I would love to have a tenant in my house shoveling the snow, I can tell you that. And especially since my husband works late at night all the time. Anyway, there are plenty of seniors in the room. I'm about to be one, and it's really important. It was wonderful for my father-in-law, who passed away earlier this year, to live to 98 and to be cared for in his own home right up until the end. Now, I will say that was in England. However, there's no reason that can't happen here with the array of services that a good healthcare system could provide. Thank you.
Has been pushing privatized seniors care that is unaffordable to many seniors, but is actually still funded by Alberta Health Services. This lack of beds means that seniors end up in hospitals, causing wait times for other hospital services, causing this sort of snowball effect of problems. And the Conservatives are also threatening to remove the cap on rates for continuing care for seniors. And of course, we also have the home care issue. Home care cuts are forcing seniors out of their home. So what would we do about it? How are we going to resolve this problem? The Alberta NDP would commit to a publicly run home care system. So to respond to your specific question there, Julie, the Alberta NDP feels we really need to focus all our resources on a publicly funded program. That is the most efficient way to address this problem. We would build and fund community-based public long-term facilities. We would keep the cap on accommodation costs for seniors in the continuing care facilities we mentioned. And we would also increase funding to home care by $100 million to improve services for thousands of Albertan seniors. All Albertan seniors from all walks of life, regardless of their income, deserve high-quality care in their later years. Thank you.
I don't know if you, some of you guys know, but Prentice has the same plan as Redford here. You know, my question is why were the beds cut in the first place? And now we're deciding to open them up now. You know, healthcare is great when you get in. You know, we need to invest into non-profit care. Also, we need to invest into seniors' day programs where mom gets to go, have a break from dad, and have a good time and get to have some own quality time. Okay? Family doctors need to work with teams. That means with nurses and mental health workers. Okay? Investing is our prevention. As of right now, the PC government has upped healthcare spending 54% from $11.9 billion to $18.3 billion. Where has the money gone? What has been done? I can't see it. I don't know if you can see it. Our leader is a doctor. He works in the healthcare system every single day. The Alberta Liberals will fix the problem. Thank you.
The Alberta Party would support a publicly funded universal healthcare system, and we need to put our funds into that. It's important to take responsibility for our care of seniors. We need to find access to long-term care facilities. We need to increase that access, to have a home care available to seniors in their homes so that they can age in their homes and stay in their communities. We need to increase frontline services and care. We also need to decrease the bureaucratic board restructuring that continues every few years in this province. We also have a hospital culture in this city where we don't have access to proper healthcare services in our own communities. We end up taking those healthcare concerns to big hospitals, and we have long wait times. So we need to deal with the healthcare issues that are in our communities, and that would help with seniors as well. My definite support would be with the publicly funded healthcare services, and that's where the Alberta Party would put their support as well.
Great.
Okay, what's the plan, your plan to keep our economic momentum if our oil price will be stay $60 in the next 5 years?
Well done. That's exactly what it says here. Thank you. Once you hit 40, you just can't see. That's it. It's over. So apologies, Polly.
Okay, about economics and oil. First of all, realize oil is not going to last forever. Climate change is here, and we can do something about it. We live, as our Alberta Liberal fellow said, in this fantastic province, in this fantastic country. Why aren't we at the leading edge of investing in change, of investing in other kinds of energy? We have to do it anyway. Let's do it now. Let's do it soon. Let's be a world leader. We are a smart province, and we have all of the capabilities to do this. And to keep we're not going to talk about the price of oil because oil is going to be phased out, okay, eventually. But these other industries, that is economy. That is an investment in keeping business here and going and being innovative, and we can do it in Alberta. Yes.
All right. Yeah, thank you for the question. Very topical. And I'm someone, I have actually worked in the oil industry when I owned my own business. I worked in a few big oil companies here, and obviously as a Calgarian, I've benefited from the great resources, the great prosperity it's brought us here. But I'm also, of course, like many of you, I'm concerned about the sustainability of the situation we're in. And I think for far too long, Conservative governments have set the rules so that oil companies prosper and Albertans are getting too little from these resources that we actually own. For far too long, the Conservatives have refused to introduce royalty rates for the oil sands that would put Albertans first, and they haven't even met the qualifications of their own blue ribbon panel of experts. So for our solution, what does the Alberta NDP think of doing? And it's an industry that depends on resources that belongs to all of us, like my friend Polly mentioned, and it should benefit all of us. The huge resources of the oil sands should be used to provide a fair return of revenue to the Alberta Treasury and also create good jobs, which is very key. We need to create the good jobs and keep the economic activity inside Alberta. I also believe that Alberta, of course, we have to get our products to market, very critical, but I also believe that when we're thinking about pipelines and we're thinking about the oil industry, we have to take into account two important factors. First one, of course, is consulting with First Nations. And second, like Polly mentioned, our environmental concerns. I think if we're going to have this industry, if it's going to be here for a long time and we're going to rely on it, we need to do it right. We want to ensure that we get the best value for our resource wealth through upgrading and through good quality jobs here in Alberta. Thank you.
The Liberal government here would first start putting money back into the Heritage Fund. Second, we would start investing into our child's education, then go into post-secondary to create greater minds for the future, because oil is not going to last forever. We're going to use the oil as much as we can and bring it to market so we can make the money off of it and invest into our future. That's what we'll do. Thank you.
I believe that we need to manage and respect our resources. We need to develop them responsibly. We need to take care of the environment in doing so. We need to use our full potential, and I don't think that we're doing that at this point in time. We need to diversify our economy, and to do that, we need to invest in entrepreneurship. We need to provide opportunities for our people to create jobs in Alberta. We need to encourage entrepreneurship and ensure that citizens benefit. Alberta is more than just its oil prices. We need to use the resources of our oil sands. I agree with Robert. It was on my list of things to talk about. The Heritage Fund, we have dipped into that Heritage Fund over and over again. That's where we should be making sure that we keep our money invested. We need to take care of environment. We need to invest in our future and diversify by putting money into education.
In the constituency, we have a lot of people that work in the oil and gas sector in our area, and market access is incredibly important, and getting our product to market, of course, is one of those issues. So Wild Rose Party, we certainly support the use of pipelines to do that, and getting our product to market through a safe and reliable source such as this, and that's why we support Keystone XL, we support the Gateway, Northern Gateway, Energy East, and the Trans Mountain pipelines. Danielle Smith, our leader, has created and presented a really bold vision as far as our getting our pipeline going. It's called the National Resource Right-of-Way, and that will help keep our energy resource moving in Alberta and continue that revenue, because we are an oil-based province. We do have this unbelievable resource in our province, and as we're developing this resource, we are also developing our students, we're developing an education, we're developing world-class a resource with our people. We have some leading experts here. We have this young student that just recently learned how to work with the tailings ponds to remove some of the contaminants. And this is the kind of first-class educational we have right here in Alberta. So our natural resource, we have to continue getting that to market, and of course, working with our First Nation and Aboriginal people to do that is very, very important. And I think that, again, we have this wonderful vision of Danielle's, and again, getting through this with solving some regulatory hurdles and getting our product to market. So thanks very much.
So this next, as Alberta's population increases by more than 100,000 a year, it's clear we need to invest in the infrastructure and public services. Some say we should have an adult conversation about our tax structure to make sure we have stable funding. Some, like Jack Mintz, suggest we should have a sales tax. Others suggest we should go back to a progressive tax system. What's your position and your party's position on how we can, or if we should, change our tax system? Jennifer, you first.
Oh yeah, great question. So, I mean, as you know, once again, someone who considers Calgary my home, I've been here for a long time. We look at our government and we expect some sort of long-term planning for this question, right? We think, where is the government going? The PCs have cut taxes to corporations by 1/3. Meanwhile, the rest of us are paying about $1,000 more an average per year for utilities and childcare and health and education. This lack of long-term planning has left an economy dependent on industries that extract resources out of our province for refining and upgrading, along with some jobs. So this is not sustainable. And to answer your question specifically, the NDP does have a very comprehensive economic plan. The first thing we would do, so this would count where the funds would come from, we would reverse the corporate taxes of recent years. We think that corporations should contribute back to the communities that they're part of. We would raise corporate taxes by 2%, and we actually also have a plan to reduce taxes for small businesses by 2%, and I believe we're the only party running with that in our platform. The Alberta NDP also believes, and I support this as well, that we should move towards a competitive but also progressive tax on the wealthiest Albertans, while holding the line for taxes for the vast majority of us. This makes the system a bit more fair. It asks the wealthy folks to give back a little more, but it also generates revenue. That's our plan.
First, Mr. Prentice's bankers and billionaire friends got to pay their fair share of taxes. Well, we reduce taxes for middle class, not to mention the cost of your bills. Alberta doesn't need a tax increase or a sales tax. In order to do this, we're going to cut the government red tape, provide government transparency and provide a heritage fund that's able to access billions of dollars to the economy of Alberta. And it's going to be because of smart investing. The Alberta Liberal government here will get sustainable government and reduce your cost of bills and taxes while you're able to enjoy that vacation you always wanted. Thank you.
I believe that we have a budget that is able to sustain what we need to do with it right now. I think what we need is government transparency. I believe that we right now are experiencing the misuse of public dollars, and I think if we got back to the transparency of what government is doing with our public dollars, we would find that we have enough to budget for what we need. I would like to move away from the flat tax system and have a fairer, more equitable way of taxation, not equal, but equitable. I would like to see long-term planning done by government and not just increases and decreases made without consideration for the future. I'd like to see resource income invested. I would like to see the Heritage Fund, money put back into the Heritage Fund. I would like to see an increase in accountability of government so that we know where our public dollars are going and those dollars aren't wasted. I don't think that we need to do anything, we don't need to increase taxes other than moving away from the flat tax system, and definitely government transparency is the issue.
Well, thank you. Despite record revenues, the PC government is driving Alberta billions of dollars in debt, and they're running us in deficit. At last check at the debt clock, it was 11 billion, and it's growing by the second. Borrowing under the PC government means hundreds of millions of dollars are being soaked up in interest payments every year. And away from the services that we've been talking about, healthcare, school. The Wildrose Plan will end wasteful spending and programs under the PC government and redirect the money to the frontline workers. We will legislate year-over-year increases in spending to the rate of inflation and population growth. And we'll also implement an aggressive savings strategy by investing 50% of all future surpluses into the Heritage Fund. Thank you.
There's a common thread here, going back to pre-flat rate taxes. Yes, the Green Party is very much in favor of that. That goes back to the corporate tax and equivalency, not equality of taxes based on ability to pay and where you are in the spectrum. That's all part of social justice as a format, as a foundational principle. Another thing that some people were saying too around the infrastructure, and money to spend, to whatever you want to spend it on, whether it's a holiday or whatever. Efficiency. How can we do better, even in our own homes, and spend less money on energy, less money on water, less money on the resources that we use by having higher technology, better technologies, better insulation, better homes, better buildings, smarter buildings, healthier buildings. All of that will save money that we can put into other infrastructure. If we are investing in businesses that are alternative businesses and entrepreneurial, which other people have also mentioned, then we are supporting lots of businesses, and the smaller ones are paying some corporate taxes, but the bigger ones are paying more. There will be money. It will go into the Heritage Fund. We will have resources. It will work.
Thanks, Polly. Can you comment on your position on Bill 44 and how it relates to safe schools for LGBT youth? So we'll start with you, Robert.
Well, actually, the Liberals are the ones that came out with it by Kent Hare. So I don't think we have an issue with it at all. We're the ones who first introduced it. So we're all for the lesbians and gays and transsexuals. There's no differences, we're all human, and each to his own. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Bill 44 is a bill that was brought to legislature that allows parents to take students out of any educational programming that has specific content in it that would discuss any gay or lesbian or straight, any type of sexual minority issues. As a teacher, I definitely feel that it's important to have students talk about our society and the structures of our society. It's never presented as this is positive or negative. It's always presented in a straightforward and objective manner. So Bill 44, actually I would be against Bill 44 in our schools. I think that gay-straight alliances are important to have. I spoke on the radio about this back a number of months ago. Opportunities for students to have different communities that they can work with amongst themselves. They self-identify. The bullying reduces in schools when we can create community, and I definitely think that any opportunities that we have to support and create community and understanding amongst students is extremely important. And I think that education about what types of families our society has is not a negative thing. Of course, there might be people that have their own family beliefs, but learning in schools to accept one another and to begin to have community with one another, it just strengthens the communities that we have. Thanks.
Well, excuse me, as a police officer, I spent about 14 years doing a lot of talks and meeting with many, many kids that had been bullied and cyberbullied, and it was heartbreaking and devastating for them. Many of them did not want to go to school. Many of them wanted to change schools. They felt socially excluded. They were afraid to go to school. So personally, I very much support the community, the LGBTQ. Added too many in there, LGBTQ community. And as far as the Wild Rose Party is concerned, we are here to represent all Albertans. And I know when I was in the police, I wasn't picking and choosing. I really supported all the community, and I think that's really important that we build that support. So certainly the Wild Rose Party supports the LGBTQ community. We believe it is important. We send a message to all Albertans, and that no group will be discriminated against and any less Albertan than anybody else. As a party, we will continue to participate in a variety of festivals and events and parades, and we strongly are supportive of measures to increase tolerance, and we believe school boards are best suited to decide the best strategy to support students and create inclusive spaces in our classroom. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Oh, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I've already mentioned the fundamental principles in the Green Party for respect for diversity and inclusivity, as well as social justice. There is no question that anybody is welcome in any community. The other thing that troubles me about a bill such as that, where someone can take someone out of a conversation. I was a school teacher. I've been a school teacher for many, many years in more than one place and at more than one level. And school should reflect our wider community. It should reflect our democracy. It should be a safe place to have a voice to talk about anything, and that includes a teacher voice, to talk about issues if something comes up, because things come up in the classroom. You should be able to discuss them. That, creating a safe environment in our classrooms and in our communities to have conversations, builds trust, builds acceptance, builds understanding, and that is what the Greens stand for. Looking to these solutions together.
Thanks, Holly. Jen, you can
do the 2 minutes, and then
Okay.
we can do a challenge after that.
Fabulous, thanks, Julie. Yeah, so this is an issue that affects all of us. I mean, it's not just an issue specific to a group. I believe we owe it to all Albertans to stand up for diversity and for respect and for inclusiveness. I liked how my friend Michelle used that word. LGBTQ issues are human rights issues, and they are diversity issues, and the Alberta NDP is proud to stand with LGBTQ Albertans. The PCs and the Wild Rose will not stand up for their rights. We've seen this many times through legislation. It makes them comfortable to talk about it, I would say. An Alberta NDP government would make it a law for the right for kids to have GSAs in schools where children request them. We would make it a law. We would also reverse the conservative changes to the Alberta Human Code from 2010, that was the bill we were referring to earlier, that prevents teachers from talking about gender and identity and sexuality in the room. This does not encourage a discussing atmosphere in a classroom. We would also make sure LGBTQ Albertans know that they are represented and they are supported by an Alberta NDP government. Thank you.
So Jen raised her hand, and she wanted to challenge one of the candidates. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just had a question, if that's okay,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Ms.
sure.
McDonald.
So
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I was curious, we've heard quite a bit about how the Wild Rose does support LGBTQ students, but I'm curious if you have any specific concrete measures, specifically in terms of GSAs and Bill 44 that you plan to put into legislature.
We certainly do support the community, the LGBTQ community. We support any measures that will help to reduce any kind of bullying or intolerance within the schools. We're very supportive of equality. Our leader is very supportive of the community. Many of us have been involved in the community. Just the other week I was marching, our leader was marching in different festivals and events. This is very, very important, and we are strongly supportive of any measures to increase tolerance. And we do want to work very closely with the school boards to make sure that any strategies are delivered in the best possible way, but very supportive of the community.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Michelle has a question or a challenge. 30 seconds to say it, and then 30-second response. Thanks.
My challenge is actually also to the Wild Rose. This issue came up actually in the legislature already. GSAs was a topic, and it was brought up as a bill. It was not supported by the education critic from the Wild Rose, Bruce McAllister. It was not supported by the Wild Rose MLA, Rob Anderson, who was a former education critic. Both of those Wild Rose members did not support allowing any time a student wanted to create a GSA in a high school to be able to do that. So I would just like to challenge
Thanks,
that
Michelle,
question.
for the response. Yeah.
Yes, we are very much supportive of the LGBTQ community, as I mentioned before, and any measures that deliver strategies against any kind of bullying or intolerance. One thing about the Wild Rose Party that is interesting and unique is that we all have a free vote. If 17 MLAs from the Wild Rose decide to go for one direction, if the community is telling me as an MLA for the Wild Rose Party that we believe a certain way, I have that free vote. So we don't all block vote in a certain way. We each have it, our own individual free voice based on our constituency. Personally, I'm very supportive of GSAs, and I'm very supportive of the LGBT community.
Great. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to another issue. I think that affects a lot of parents and a lot of families, certainly in this riding and across Calgary and across the province. Alberta currently has a severe shortage of quality, accessible, and affordable childcare spaces at a time where we are experiencing a shortage of qualified employees. What would your party's position be for addressing the crisis for young families? So I think we're back to you, Michelle.
The Alberta Party would definitely support more publicly funded daycare facilities. I also would support entrepreneurial efforts within the daycare facilities, because that gives options to parents, and I do believe that gives a lot of opportunities for people to run their own businesses. I think the economy is sustained by having good workers available, and also to have good workers available, we need to have good childcare, and that childcare also then turns into good education opportunities for our children. I think we need to invest in our future, and we need to take care of our young people. Thank you.
Well, certainly, agreeing with you, actually, we do need to look at ways to take care of our kids, and making sure that we have the best caregivers possible for our children. And that certainly is something that the Wildrose Party and the MLAs certainly care about. So anything that we can do to support our children, and making sure that we provide opportunities for people to take care of them, we certainly support that. So we respect local decision making, of course, and working with city regulations and such, but certainly we support anything that would help to provide greater care for our kids.
Thank you.
I'll just tell you a couple of stories, because it's a nice way to answer a question. In Brentwood, in the community right near where I live, there is an elementary school. There is a neighbor who was looking after children of fellow neighbors while the older children were going to school. Became so popular that she needed to then get a license to have a certain number of children in her home. So one thing that the government can do is to facilitate getting licenses to care for children in your home, and to provide the education around that, and proper health care and things like that. And then it got so popular that she actually applied for licensing to run the before and after school program and on PD days in the school. So we have a lot of buildings in our communities. We have community centers, we have schools, all kinds of places where these kinds of childcare and daycare places can happen. So how can we, as a government, help promote facilities? How do we facilitate that in our communities? Another thing, and just coming back to what's going on worldwide with early childhood care, there's a thing called the forest schools, and there are lots of communities that are having early childhood education primarily out of doors in parks. And you think of a typical preschool program, which is only a couple of hours long. This is not too long to be outside for properly dressed children, and it is healthy for them, and they connect with their place and with their environments, and they come out with a much greater education by doing all kinds of things and negotiating the world together in situ.
Thanks, Polly. Okay, yeah, I don't have any good childcare stories, but I do have quite a few friends who have children, so I've seen firsthand how childcare can definitely be a struggle for a lot of people. A lot of people really struggle to find childcare spaces nearby, but then if they do find them even, the prices are just so prohibitive. And then often parents, especially women, tend to drop out of the workforce because of that. So right now, Alberta spends less per capita on childcare than any other province. Families are struggling to afford childcare, while childcare corporations are actually getting public grants to subsidize their operations, which does not sound right to me. The problem with this approach is market-based childcare results in an access and a quality crisis, and this crisis often hits women the hardest. The NDP has a very specific solution for this. Some of you might have seen our federal leader, Thomas Mulcair, I think it was yesterday, rolled out a very comprehensive, a very forward-thinking childcare policy. This issue is clearly high priority for the party across the country. We have a very specific plan. As your MLA, I would introduce a childcare system that moves towards a maximum daily cost of about $25 per child, And we would put a $9 cap on after-school care. That's per day, sorry. I believe childcare is critical as a human service, but it's also actually really good for our economy in the long term. Parents who have affordable childcare will join the workforce, they'll contribute through taxes, and then they'll boost the economy. And there's actually been studies shown that they'll boost the economy by almost twice as much as what we originally invested in childcare in the first place. So I feel that childcare must be treated like an investment in our future.
For us, it begins with education. We need to build sustainable, adequate, and predictable investments in our future of education. We need to build schools as community hubs that serve as child care centers and as community gardens, so everyone in the community can come together and enjoy each other. First, the Liberals would also introduce daycare programs in the workforce and cheap child care. Thank you.
First off, Alberta has committed to meeting greenhouse gas emissions by 2020. Would your party commit to achieving those goals? And what would your party's strategies be to make that happen? Another piece of that is there are many harmful impacts from development of the oil sands. Harm to Aboriginal communities, harm to the air, the water, the soil, climate, and all forms of wild animals and plants. Given these many harms, does your party support imposing a limit on the rate of production of the oil sands? And so I think we're going to start, who am I starting with next? I think it's Kathy. Yeah, you're next.
Okay.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah.
Thanks very much. The Wild Rose Party is very committed to clean air, water, and land. We want to protect the environment. We are committed to lowering greenhouse gas emissions and CO2 emissions. Although we're doing a good job here in Alberta, we certainly could improve, and we do have some strategies. Those strategies are based on moving from coal to natural gas, and so we can get rid of our coal-fired electricity generation and replace it with natural gas. We're also committed to improving mass transit, and that's our LRT system, so we can have less reliance on vehicles, and offering incentives to consumers using renewable energy. We're also committed to working with industry. I think this is to the point of the oil sands, to phase out our oil sands tailings ponds. We certainly are committed to protecting our land, our air, and our water currently and for future generations. That is critically important, and Wild Rose Party is very committed to doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The answers are yes and yes. I can elaborate a little bit. Does your party support the reduction of greenhouse gases? Well, this is a no-brainer, of course. And can we do it soon? Why not? Is the other part of that question. One of the things, Alberta is riddled with existing pipelines, moving oil products all over, and natural gas, all over the province all the time. Are all of these up to date? Do they need repair? Yes, is the answer. While we are still extracting resources of these kinds, it needs to be safer and cleaner and attend to our housekeeping right now. We have to tighten up the pipelines, we have to tighten up those wellheads, all of that stuff. Without, what's the rush on building new pipelines? If we have enough, moving a lot, while we are ramping down oil extraction, we can be ramping up other industries with the non-renewables. We move away from coal, which is polluting our air and water. All kinds of countries are successfully doing this, and we can too. I think that pretty much addresses those two questions.
Thank you, Polly.
Yeah.
Jennifer.
Yeah, So this is a cause that's near and dear to my heart. I've done some volunteering in this area with a great organization called Open Streets Calgary, and also as sort of younger person, I think I can still fit in that bracket. The issue of sustainability is really important to me. I think my generation feels like we're going to inherit a lot of the challenges that are coming across with the choices being made right now. And I'm proud, I want to say, of Calgary's clean air and clean water. I think we have a great place to live. But I have seen this city expand drastically without planning for sustainability. And so to answer your first question, yes, we definitely would like to meet that goal, but first we need a change in approach. The Conservative and Wild Rose parties have sort of gone all in on fossil fuels, and they have connections with the energy sector that I believe will not allow either of them to protect our water, air, or land. 8 years ago, after starting Alberta's climate change strategy, the province, first of all, it failed to meet its targets. Second of all, it failed to monitor its results. And then third of all, from what I've seen, they have not produced a single document saying what the status of the strategy is. And then they introduced a new strategy recently without addressing what happened with the older one. So this is not acceptable. And I believe, along with the Alberta NDP, and I hope this answers your second question, Julie, that we cannot afford to ignore the threat of climate change. We should be tapping into this incredible knowledge base we have in the energy sector in Calgary, and some of my other colleagues have referenced that too, to find ways to innovate for transitioning into cleaner forms of energy. Here, more than any other place in the country, we should have a comprehensive renewable energy policy. And I believe that we need an independent, transparent, and science-led system of environmental oversight. So those are the solutions the Alberta NDP would offer.
You know, as so far as I've been traveling around the world. I've been to Hong Kong, Macau, Sri Lanka. Those places I've been to are absolutely disgusting. I would not want Alberta to become like Hong Kong or Macau. The harbors are dirty, there's garbage everywhere, you can't even go outside and breathe. I tried playing basketball in Hong Kong, that was impossible. I felt like I was just gonna pass out on the pavement. The Alberta Liberal government would first cut the coal power plants and find renewable energy. We would also put a carbon tax on heavy polluting industries. First, it begins with education though. Education is the most important thing that we can teach our people. We can teach them how to recycle properly, what to do with the trash, and how to be better people to the environment. Post-secondary education, we can invest to create better technologies and innovate to different resources and energy policies. Thank you.
Absolutely, the Alberta Party would protect the environment. But no, I don't think that we need to limit the rate of production. I think what we need to do is change the focus. Right now, we are not sustaining for the future. We can't ignore the problem of climate change. We have prosperity without thought. What we need to do is take away the responsibility of environmental protection from industry. We need to take that back into government hands. Government has a duty to monitor and enforce the climate conditions that are happening with the oil sands. We need to take back into the government domain and enforce what our rules are in terms of the environment and enforce the cleanup that's required. We have treaties that require consultation with Aboriginal people. That also is happening right now with industry, with businesses, and there's no way for government to enforce or to monitor or ensure that that's happening. We should not have industry doing the consultation. It should be government that does that consultation. We need to listen to our experts and act upon what they recommend for us. I also would propose a triple bottom line approach. There's 3 objectives that we need to make sure that we're looking at in terms of environment and industry and the combination. We need to make sure that we enhance our prosperity as a province, absolutely. But we absolutely need to protect our planet. Equally as important, if not more. And we also need to have the prosperity benefit the people, the citizens of Alberta. So it's not just industry that's benefiting, but it is our people as well. but the plan definitely should be a responsibility of the government. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to try to bring two questions in again so we can hit one particular subject, because we are moving along here tonight. And the issue is education. And as many of us know, there's a lot of challenges going on in education right now. With the challenges teachers, staff, students, and parents are experiencing with large class sizes, would your party commit to the Alberta Commission on Learning class size targets, which are junior kindergarten to grade 3, 17 students, grade 4 to grade 6, 23 students, grade 7 to grade 9, 25 students, grade 10 to grade 12, 27 students? And if so, how would your If so, what would your party do to achieve that? And this is kind of the second piece of it, because there's also some concern around Albertans having the lowest scores, or Canadians, I guess, in Canadian children having the lowest scores, in particular educational scores in math and science among the developed countries. And so there's concern around that. And what would your party do to improve that? So kind of a two-piece question around education. And I think, Polly, where are you? Is that where we're at?
Possibly.
Yeah, where are you? Yeah. Tag, you're at.
I'm not necessarily speaking for the Green Party, but as a Green person, I would agree with that commission that came out before with the smaller class sizes. So awesome, and why not? We're trying to build, it's in line with the Green Party policies of trying to build community, to give individual care and attention to everyone. We need smaller classes to do that. I will also say that the school I've had the most contact with is very creative with their staffing. So it isn't necessarily one classroom teacher. There might be, instead of 17 in a K to 3 siding, but there are creative ways to team teach, to have specialist teachers in, to take some students off for music at a particular time, so that the students are in those groups, small groups all the time with qualified teachers, of course, but there has to be flexibility to arrange what 17 to 1 looks like, or 27 to 1 looks like. It's a little harder to do in high school. We don't have as integrated a kind of program, but there's a lot of movement within education to make high school more integrated in its subjects as well. So there are other ways to keep class size down. I think the other part of that question was how to fund that. Well, if we're switching up corporate taxes and all that sort of thing to have more money in our economy to spend on our society, well, then that's where the money's coming from. So we've already sort of talked about that already.
Thank you, Polly.
Okay, I'll try my best. So I'm someone who I attended most of my childhood education here. I did my bachelor's degree here, so I have some firsthand experience with the strengths and the weaknesses of the system, and now my friends' children are going to school, and I start to worry about some of the changes I see. I think maybe they're not for the better. And I think this has been a theme throughout the night. In our country's most profitable province, we should have the most groundbreaking and the most accessible education. We all believe every child deserves a good start in life, safe care, and a stimulating environment. And the Conservative record, gesturing to the pumpkin, Conservative record on education, it's just not good enough. The Conservatives have refused to guarantee school boards adequate funding to enable long-term planning. So once again, we're back to this long-term planning issue. There are hundreds fewer staff. There are 700 fewer teachers now in the classroom than there were 2 years ago. That's a huge number. And the Calgary Board of Education has spent its savings. We also have a PC government who, they like to promise things before elections. They promised us a whole bunch of schools. Some of us are maybe a bit skeptical about whether they'll come through. So we do have a problem here. And we know our province can do better. So to answer your first question, sort of similar to my environmental answer, actually, yes, that sounds like a great goal that we would try to meet, but first we need a change in approach. As your MLA, these are some things I would commit to. First of all, I would work with school boards to ensure adequate and stable funding for the next 4 years. We would prohibit school instructional fees, and we would phase in a targeted school breakfast program for elementary students. And also, as mentioned previously, we would fully support gay-straight alliances for any schools where students ask for them. And Alberta NDP government recognizes that by helping young Albertans get the skills they need, we're really making us all richer. We're making our province richer, we're making our communities richer, and we're making our families richer.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yes, the Liberal government agrees with small class sizes, but first, we need to begin with the smaller steps first. We need to get rid of our trailers on wheels for the schools. We need to invest into education. Teachers need support, and that begins with a social worker, a school nurse, the officer, and the mental health. That's how you reduce crime and fix the healthcare system at the same time. Education is the key investment to a strong economy and a strong society. If we do not invest into our education today, we're going to have problems in the future to become. Today is where it begins, and you can start today. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
The Commission on Learning that occurred a few years ago had one critical flaw. And that critical flaw was it did not make the opportunities for teachers to participate in its creation very easy. However, we did come out with some class size targets from the Commission, and for a year or two, those were implemented in K-3. Implemented, but not really implemented, because the PC government didn't make sure that those targets were actually kids in seats in classrooms with a teacher. All sorts of people can be included in those numbers. It can be administrators that are not in the classroom. It can be central office staff. Anyone who has a certificate is counted in those numbers. So when we say a class size of 17, well, we're not talking about class sizes of 17. We're talking about a ratio that includes a lot more people than just teachers. That's the first problem. So one of the issues that I find is that we have exclusion right now of any education issues. There's an exclusion of teachers. We have an exclusion of teachers when we're talking about bringing in new curriculum. Another issue we need to address is a balanced curriculum. Our class size targets are out the window. In the last 3 years alone, with our education minister that we don't have just recently, class sizes have increased by 10 kids in a class. And when you're talking about 35, 40 kids in a classroom, that makes a huge difference. We don't actually have the scores that were indicated. Alberta scores are much higher than Canadian as an average. We have a world-class system, but it's in decline, and I think it's important to make sure that we stop that decline. We should take a look at the Blue Ribbon Panel, just came out. It talks about inclusive education. We have no funding for inclusive education right now. We're including kids in classrooms, and we have taken away the support. So that's another issue we need to take a look at. We have 11,000 more students in our system in Alberta in the last couple of years, and we have 141 less teachers. We need teachers, we need schools, and we need also to just talk about the distribution of funding. We need to ensure that school boards spend the dollars that they have. School boards, back to Jennifer's point, school boards don't ensure that they have funding,
Michelle.
they distribute funding.
Great, thank you.
Well, I guess to start off with, when you talked about overcrowding in schools, we're not even getting schools. We have some communities in Foothills that do not have schools. Kincora, Nolan Hill, Sage Hill do not have schools. And these starter schools are not, they're not a solution. They don't have a gymnasium. And any of you that have grown up with schools, you know that that's where you have assemblies. That's where you build team spirit. And it's a real shame that these kids that are going to those starter schools are not going to get that. And what is really shameful is that this PC government and they've been wasting these dollars on other things besides the kids going to school, getting their good, getting an education. What I'd like to mention as well is the the CBE building downtown that's $285 million, I'm sure that building has something that's akin to a fitness room or a gymnasium, as I mentioned. That's a shameful waste of money for 600 employees, instead of investing it in our kids and getting some schools out there. So when you talk about overcrowding, I've spoken to people that have 37 kids in a classroom. We certainly believe in inclusion. We need to get special needs kids in with the classes, but again, the dollars need to follow the students, and we need to have assistance in there. Wild Rose Party as well wants to get back to the foundations and fundamentals of math, science, and language. That's really important because our kids are learning all these different strategies, and they're not learning the basics. And again, back to the grades, consistent provincial grading with a traditional letter and a percentage from grades 5 to 12, and that will help parents as well. We want to make sure that we're supporting our teachers as much as we can, and our kids. Thank you.
Great, thank you.